Good morning, YouTube. ARCHMAN here. A little different perspective this time around. Sorry about that. I'm going to do a initial impressions video on this little baby Huey here. So got a couple, most of my folding knives out here for comparison's sake. A little coffee talk. Actually, it's probably a bad place for that. Talk a little bit right out of the box. All right. So only had this for less than 24 hours, so definitely is initial impressions only with this knife, just to be clear. Right out of the box though, first thing I noticed is how thin the blade stock is. I was pretty surprised with that. The pictures kind of dictate that it's going to be thinner, and I thought it would be thinner than the SNG, but Ryan at Blue Line Gear, I guess he didn't have an SNG to compare it with at the time, but he said, oh yeah, it's the same as an SNG. But you can see quite a bit thinner stock here than the SNG, which I like a thinner blade grind. It's just not what I was expecting from Strider, which is fine. It's nice to see something different. I hate to seem like not enthusiastic in this video. It's just that this knife is, I got a lot of impressions on this knife, and it's kind of an eyebrow raiser, all things considered, especially it being from Strider. So the G10, real quick, is a lot lighter than I thought it would be. It looked lighter in the pictures, but you never can tell with pictures. So this is the Dark Earth, and this SMF also is Dark Earth G10. And it's just because of the contours, the way the handle is contoured and tapers down, which is a really nice touch. I like that a lot. But so you can see all the layers of the G10, whereas this is just a flat one layer of the G10. But if you look at the cross section here, you can see that they actually are the same color G10, being the Dark Earth. Lightweight little guy. I mean, I think I saw 3.9 ounces on the specs. I don't know. I don't have a scale, but it feels lighter than that. It's a really lightweight knife, which is excellent. A little smaller than I thought, I guess. It's you look at the specs and hold a ruler up, and all that stuff, and think about it, but it's a little smaller. It's not the one I wanted than I thought it would be. Just real quick, up next to the small Sabenza, so I'll give you some kind of size comparison here. Let's see, and well, I mean, I guess the titanium, both scales are really thick material. It's going to be thicker than your SNG SMF titanium scale, which is excellent, especially given that there's only like 2 screws holding the knife together. Big old fat chunk of titanium is definitely welcome on this knife, and you can see it's about as thick as an SMF here, and then it tapers down to being pretty thin on the butt end of the handle. Super cool. Yeah, definitely welcome. So the fit and finish on this thing is definitely surprising. I mean, the fit and finish on this knife is completely spot on. It's absolutely the most well-made Strider knife I've ever seen. They've changed the lock on the baby Huey. I believe this is the first production knife with Strider's new lock on it. So you can see there's a lot less space in there for the lock, but what they've done, it seems to me, is they've actually machined the lock face on the lock bar, whereas before it was just simply cut out and they machined the blade tang to mate up with it, in my opinion, in a more or less crude way. But yeah, they've definitely stepped it up quite a bit. I imagine Strider has bought some new machinery. Who knows? But just every aspect of the knife is, the fit and finish is much better. Not counting all this file work type stuff, which I could give or take. Honestly, for me. You know, one of the bummers is the two screws holding it together. I really wouldn't mind seeing another screw somewhere in this knife. But I do like the way it looks. For those of you guys that have a Chris Reeve Knives Mnandi, this knife is built identically to the Mnandi. A captive pin in here that is the blade stop and the stop pin for the lock, and a screw right in the middle of the butt and one screw in the pivot. So basically identical to the Mnandi, the way that it's built. So kind of take that for what it is. The width, you know, looking at pictures, obviously you can tell this little thing is going to be a wide little knife. Obviously, looking at the knives I have here, I don't have a huge problem with wide knives, but my favorites, I don't know, I just really prefer a slimmer thing to carry in my pocket, you know. So this actually, compared to any of these knives, is wider than any of them. So that's something to think about there. It's just my preference, obviously, you know. Let's see, you know, this knife is $400, and you know, that just kind of is what it is. But the SNG starts at 400, and you know, the Sabenzas, large Sabenzas around 400, 350 for the small Sabenza. You know, so some things to think about here is, you know, like, this knife is, while it's a really nice little knife, fancy and most likely, you know, durable. You know, I'd probably put it on the same level of durability as like the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. But in my opinion, just looking at the construction of the thing, the SNG is better made. Although this has a nicer lock, a much better lock. Mark my words, Generation 7 SNG will come out in 2012 and have this lock on it, and probably be more expensive than $400. So, yeah, I don't know, you know, honestly, I mean, if a friend of mine came up to me and said, I really want to step it up and buy an awesome knife, I got $500 to spend or whatever, which would never happen. Most people don't even dream of spending that much money on a knife. You know, this would be, my number one recommendations would be a Sabenza first, and if they really love the Strider, like I do have a friend that has a particular boner for this knife, I would say, yeah, the SNG over this knife. But I mean, if what you wanted was a fancy, you know, nice looking, you know, jewel-like thing, then this is obviously a good way to go. And that's just kind of my opinion. You know, I'm not a huge fan of how teeny tiny this little stop pin is on it. You look at like even the small Sabenza's stop pin, considerably more robust, thicker, all that stuff. You know, this small Sabenza is very comparable to this knife, actually. They both have a 3-inch blade, pretty similar size, all things considered, really. But $50 cheaper, and in my opinion, just going to be a better knife, you know, all things considered. And that's just my opinion. But this knife is excellent, you know. I'm definitely going to carry it and use it and check it out, see what kind of use I can get out of this freaking gut shovel here. But you know, this knife seems to me could have been made by Spyderco for $250. You know, the only thing that makes this knife worth $400 is all the fancy stuff done to it. You know, I mean, that just is what it is. You know, that's one of the things about Striders. They're expensive because they're the only ones who do. I mean, nobody else is doing something like this, really. You know, Kershaw maybe, but I don't know. I feel like Striders got a leg up on them. But anyhow, guys, palabra tu madre. Questions, comments, concerns, smart remarks, post them below. And don't let your meatloaf, boys.